Pokemon Puzzle League is, as the name implies, a puzzle game for the Nintendo 64. It was developed by Nintendo Software Technology, which is effectively Nintendo's North American software development branch, and released on September 25, 2000 in North America. The game would later go on to be released in Europe the following year, on March 2, 2001, but that would be the end of its global releases. If there's anyone watching me now who still remembers this, I'll be surprised, but way back when I first started making videos on YouTube, I reviewed a game called Panel de Pon. That game was the first in the series that Pokemon Puzzle League here belongs to. In hearing this, many of you may have just thought, but that's a Japanese game and Pokemon Puzzle League is a North American game. And that's right. Weirdly enough, a game that many fans would consider to be a major release in the Panel de Pon series was never released in Japan. The original game was even developed by a completely different studio, Intelligent Systems. Now, as for the reason why this was a Western-only release, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd say it had something to do with this game being heavily marketed at the Western fans of the Pokemon anime. Sure, Pokemon was extremely popular in Japan as well at the time, but this game was clearly made with a basis in the heavily localized Western version of the show. Making all the changes necessary to move the game over to Japan just probably wasn't worth it. But whatever the case may be, that's not what we're here to talk about right now. We're here to talk about the actual game and how I think it holds up over 20 years since its initial release. So without further ado, let's get into the review of Pokemon Puzzle League. So to start off, let's talk about what the player will see upon starting up the game for the first time. Well, the first thing we get is this game's version of the Nintendo 64 logo screen, which in true Panel de Pon fashion is accompanied by a high-pitched reading of the name Nintendo. This is followed by a big Pokeball closing on the logo and opening up to the title screen, where we see Ash and a few of his Pokemon surrounded by some panels from the game and a big Pokemon Puzzle League logo. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'm always a fan of more unique title screens that do something to engage the player. I would have liked to see a bit of movement here, maybe with Ash and his Pokemon, or even the panels in the background. Anything would have been better than a static image that does nothing to build my anticipation for the game ahead. Now, there is some music here in the form of an instrumental version of the English Pokemon intro, which is nice, but it only plays for a few seconds before Professor Oak hijacks the screen to give us a basic tutorial. The tutorial itself, though, is pretty well done and does a good job of teaching the player the basics if they've never played a Panel de Pon style game before. After the tutorial's over, we can head into the actual game, where we're greeted with a short animated cutscene that outlines the story of Pokemon Puzzle League, and yes, there is a story here. To summarize, Ash and Pikachu are chilling out at the pool when they receive a call from Professor Oak on a conveniently close-by video phone. Why that phone was there, just sitting next to Ash while he was relaxing at the pool, I have no idea, but that's not important. Professor Oak tells Ash that there's going to be an official Pokemon Puzzle League tournament and that he's been selected as one of the challengers. To this, Ash replies that he'll go sign up for the tournament, which kind of defeats the purpose of him being chosen as a challenger, but whatever, it's for kids. Ash then sets off for Pokemon Puzzle League Village, which is where this new Puzzle League tournament is going to take place. After this short intro, we find ourselves at the main menu of Pokemon Puzzle League, which I actually really like. As opposed to Panel de Pon, which featured a very simple drop-down menu listing the various game modes for its menu, Pokemon Puzzle League has a big map of Puzzle Village where the many buildings correspond to the different modes of the game. This style of menu is one that we don't see very often, even today. The standard is to just list out the modes of your game in a very boring way, which is a big shame in my opinion, because there's so many cool and fun things that can be done with a main menu like what we see here. But enough about menus and intros, let's move on to how you actually play this game. Now, I know this is probably a pretty straightforward game to most people, but let me just explain the mechanics very briefly, in case there's anyone out there unfamiliar with the Panel de Pon style of puzzle game. The overarching goal of the game is to clear as many tiles from your screen as possible by maneuvering them in such a way that 3 or more of the same type of tile form a vertical or horizontal line. The more tiles you clear in one move, including things like combos and chains of clears, the better the effect on whatever game mode you're playing. For example, if you're playing against a CPU and you chain a few clears together, you'll send a large amount of what's called garbage to that CPU. This garbage can only be removed by using a tile that touches it to make a group of 3 or more tiles. The garbage will then turn into regular tiles and can be cleared as normal. So essentially the goal in a game like this would be to send as much garbage to your opponent as possible so that they'll have a hard time clearing it by the time it reaches the top of the screen, which is this game's loss condition. It's really a rather simple concept for a game at its core. Just clear as many tiles as you can, as fast as you can, while performing as many difficult maneuvers as you can. That's all you really need to know when it comes to the basic gameplay. But anyway, now let's talk about what is the main event when it comes to Pokemon Puzzle League, the game modes. The first game mode we're going to talk about is presumably what was supposed to be this game's main game mode, if you will, Stadium Mode. This is the mode in which the actual Pokemon Puzzle League tournament that Professor Oak mentioned before takes place. To start off with, we have 3 difficulty modes: easy, normal, and hard. If you're over the age of 10, easy and normal mode probably won't give you much, if any, challenge at all, so that just leaves hard. Hard mode isn't the toughest thing in the world by any means, but it's not something you can just blast through without thinking either. The way this mode works is essentially like an arcade mode from a fighting game like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. You battle against one opponent at a time until you either run out of opponents or you lose and choose not to continue. The opponents you'll be facing in this mode are all major opponents from Ash's journey in the anime, like his rival Gary, the gym leaders, Team Rocket, and the Elite Four. Each challenger you face in Stadium Mode will have a few lines of dialogue that help to build the very basic story of Pokemon Puzzle League. Most of the time they'll mention something about the mysterious Puzzle Master who stands at the top of the Pokemon Puzzle League. This will naturally lead you to believe that your goal in this game mode is to defeat the Puzzle Master and claim his title, but that's impossible to do on hard difficulty. Why, you ask? Well, it's because as the difficulty level goes up, so does the length of the tournament. For example, when you clear the game on normal difficulty, you finish on Bruno of the Elite Four, but on hard difficulty, you defeat all of the Elite Four and have a rematch with Gary. But Gary isn't the Puzzle Master. When you complete hard difficulty, you unlock the very hard difficulty, which will finally allow you to face the infamous Puzzle Master, also known as Mewtwo. This mode was the hardest by far and took me well over 100 continues to complete. It's not something any normal human can just waltz into and clear on the first try without using continues, which in hindsight is probably a good thing. The base difficulty modes don't give the player enough of a challenge to keep an adult engaged for more than an hour or two, so it's nice that this is here. There is one final difficulty known as Super Hard that unlocks after you clear very hard, but it doesn't add any extra battles or worthwhile rewards, so personally I didn't feel too motivated to spend what would probably be several hours grinding continues to clear it. It is nice that it's here though, as it provides the player with one final almost insurmountable challenge to work towards completing. The next game mode we're going to talk about is Puzzle University. As the name implies, this is this game's puzzle-solving mode. In this mode, you have a set number of moves you can make before you fail a puzzle, and it's your job to find the correct moves that lead to all tiles being cleared from the screen. This can be an extremely simple task or an extremely difficult one depending on how the puzzle was built. Some puzzles you can solve at a glance, while others will require an hour or more to work out. But that was the case in previous Panel de Pon games as well, so what new elements does Pokemon Puzzle League bring to the table? Well, there's obviously new puzzles, but that's a given with a new game. The main additions to the puzzle mode in Pokemon Puzzle League are the 3D puzzles and the action puzzles. 3D puzzles make use of the new 3D game format to have you solve puzzles that are cylindrically shaped. This was a neat little change of pace at first, but I quickly realized that this was nothing more than a gimmick as I played through more and more 3D puzzles. Pretty much every 3D puzzle is built in a way that makes it extremely easy to tell which tile or tiles need to be moved, and then by moving those tiles you cause a chain reaction that clears a massive amount of other tiles as a result. It's like finding the one domino to knock over that will lead to all the other dominoes falling over. It's not a particularly hard thing to do, but it is somewhat satisfying to watch unfold. I'm honestly not sure why the developers felt they couldn't make the 3D puzzles as challenging as the other puzzles in this mode. If I had to guess, I'd say they felt the three-dimensional aspect of these puzzles would make anything other than very simple puzzles too confusing, so they went with a more progressive style of puzzle. As for how I felt about these puzzles, I personally found them extremely boring because of how simplistic they were. There was so much opportunity here for a really interesting puzzle design, but that all got thrown to the wayside in favor of puzzles that amount to jingling some keys in front of the player's face. Now, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum from 3D puzzles, we have action puzzles. These I actually really liked. One of the main differences between a Panel de Pon style game and other puzzle games is the ability to move tiles while lines are clearing from the screen. This makes for a more active playstyle where you're constantly moving tiles around to make combos and chains as you see the possibility. This puzzle game mode takes advantage of this unique playstyle by making players move a tile or tiles while a row is clearing in order to complete a puzzle. In my opinion, this is the most fun form of puzzle because not only does it require puzzle-solving skills, it also requires things like good timing and reactions. As opposed to the 3D puzzles, which felt like they were shoehorned in just to justify this game being on the N64, action puzzles feel like an actual evolution of the basic puzzle format. One small issue I had with the puzzle mode as a whole was that every time you run out of moves, there's this whole process of the puzzle freezing, the game telling you failed, and you having to select try again. The nature of a mode like this is one of trial and error, so punishing the player by forcing them to wait every time they run out of moves gets really annoying really fast. Of course, there is the ability to undo a move by pressing the B button, but sometimes you want to use your last move to see what would happen, and you end up having to go through the whole "you failed, try again" process. Why not just make the game only end when you either clear a screen or pause and exit? That way we wouldn't be wasting anyone's time. But I guess at the end of the day, it's not a huge issue. The next game mode on the list is called Spa Service. If you're someone who's never played the game before, I'm sure you're thinking, what the heck does a Spa Service mode have to do with a Pokemon puzzle game? And that's a fair point. I thought the exact same thing going in, and even now I'm not exactly sure why this mode was given this name. Spa Service is this game's version of Stage Clear mode from Panel de Pon. It's like a secondary story mode that has a slightly different mechanical requirement to it. In order to clear a screen in this mode, you don't have to solve a puzzle or get an opponent to reach the top of their screen. What you have to do here is clear tiles until all remaining tiles are below a line that comes up as you clear away the tiles above. The story aspect to this mode centers around Team Rocket, who have stolen a bunch of Pokemon from trainers at the Puzzle League. They say they'll give the Pokemon back if you can beat them in what amounts to a really roundabout game of hide and seek. Each level of this mode has you quote-unquote fighting against Team Rocket in various different costumes that they wear in the anime, where you reaching the line at the bottom of the screen essentially means you found them out. I know it's a really weird concept for a game mode, but this is what we've got here. One distinction between this mode and Stage Clear from Panel de Pon is that around the halfway point this becomes a 3D puzzle game. Now I know I really ripped the usage of 3D a new one in the puzzle mode section of the review, but I do think the implementation of 3D here is much better. It actually enhances the gameplay and makes it more challenging because you have to be wary of tiles from anywhere around the cylinder hitting the top of the screen, and you have to get much more tiles in total below the end line. This is how you use 3D to enhance a puzzle game. But anyway, the final boss here is of course Giovanni, who in a similar way to the Demon King from Panel de Pon, has a health bar that only takes damage when you do advanced techniques, basically anything but a simple 3-tile clear. This was also a pretty difficult battle that required many attempts, but once you get the trick down, it's not super hard. The Spa Service mode as a whole was decently fun, albeit extremely weird in concept. And those are the big 3 game modes that Pokemon Puzzle League has on offer. There are a few other game modes here that we're going to go through really fast, but the 3 we just talked about are the big ones. Just to kind of rapid fire through these other modes, we have Marathon, which is of course this game's version of Endless Mode, where you just play until you lose. This is a fun way to kill some time, but it's not something I see myself coming back to more than a few times. The customization here is pretty much the same as in other Panel de Pon games, where you can select things like difficulty, starting speed, and 2D or 3D. These same settings also apply to our next mode, Time Zone, which is, as you might expect, a time trial mode. The goal here is to see how many points you can get in a few minutes of playtime. It's a very straightforward, cut and dry mode that doesn't really appeal to me personally, but if you like high scores and time trials, you'll probably have a fun time with Time Zone. Next we have 2-Player Stadium, which is this game's versus mode. I definitely had a lot of fun with this one as a kid playing couch co-op. You can choose between 2-player versus, 2-player Time Zone, and 2-player Spa Service, which makes for a surprising amount of multiplayer content. One thing that I always enjoyed about this mode was that you could select your favorite trainer to play as. I wish the single-player modes let you do this as well, but I guess the story-driven aspect of many of those modes made that a problem. It's not as if the stories were anything special though, if anything they were forgettable at best, so either changing up the story or removing it entirely and allowing us to play as whichever trainer we wanted would have been a net positive in my opinion. Other than these modes, we have a bunch of tutorial and practice modes in Mimic Mansion and Professor Oak's lab, but I'm not going to go over these because they're not really that interesting or important. So with that, let's move on to the next section of the review, everyone's favorite part, the artistic side of things. First off here, I'd like to talk about something I don't usually get to talk about when it comes to games, and that is the theming. Now, what do I mean by theming? Well, in this case, I'm simply talking about the theme of the game. Here, that would be Pokemon. This is a game that comes from an established series that didn't have to have a Pokemon theme to it, but it does, because someone thought the combination of Panel de Pon and Pokemon would make for a good game. Now, in my opinion, the addition of the Pokemon theme isn't inherently a bad thing, but it's not really a great thing either. There's not enough done with it to warrant this being a Pokemon game. It just feels like Panel de Pon with a Pokemon skin rather than a completely unique experience that could only be had with Pokemon and Panel de Pon working together. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Before every battle, you are prompted to select one Pokemon from a group of 3 that will act as your partner throughout the fight with your opponent. Now, to a Pokemon player, this immediately means that the Pokemon you pick will matter in terms of things like typing, stats, and attacks, but that's sadly not the case here. As far as I can tell from playing the game and doing some research online, the Pokemon you choose is purely cosmetic. The only things they change are the cries in battle, the background of your screen, and the color of the garbage you send to your opponent. That's it. This was a seriously major missed opportunity by the developers to make the gameplay of Panel de Pon more interesting and fun by implementing aspects of Pokemon gameplay into the equation. For example, let's say I chose an electric type Pokemon and my opponent chose a flying type. Maybe in that scenario I would send more garbage to him than he would send to me for the same difficulty of clear. Or you could have each Pokemon have different stats like speed, which would affect scrolling speed of the screen, attack power that would dictate the amount of garbage sent, defense that would mitigate garbage, so on and so forth. There's so much room for innovation here, it's honestly crazy that none of this stuff made it into the game. As it stands, the Pokemon aspect of this game is nothing more than a thin veil put over what is just another Panel de Pon game. It's a pretty good Panel de Pon game, don't get me wrong, it's just not a Pokemon game in anything other than name and surface level appearance. Moving on to the actual visuals of the game, they're fine. Nothing really to write home about here. I do wish they had made more of an effort to utilize the 3D capabilities of the Nintendo 64 for things like Pokemon models, trainer models, or different game modes. Pokemon Snap and Pokemon Stadium both came out before Puzzle League, so they should have had easy access to the models for the Pokemon in the game, but I guess they just didn't want to go in that direction with it. Now, I don't hate the 2D anime style of the game, but most if not all of the art for Puzzle League seems to have been taken directly from the concept art for the anime, which is just a bit lazy in my opinion. And that's really all I've got to say about the visuals here. Next up, we have the topic that I usually save for the end of my reviews, the music and audio. For the most part, the music of Pokemon Puzzle League is made up of remixes and instrumental versions of songs from the Western version of the Pokemon anime's soundtrack. If you watched the show back in the day, there's a lot of nostalgic tracks here, like To Be a Master, the Pokerap, Viridian City, What Kind of Pokemon Are You, and of course the Western Pokemon intro song. Now, I'll admit that my nostalgia for many of these songs definitely clouds my judgment when it comes to the music of Pokemon Puzzle League, but even in this clouded state, I would still have liked to see more original tracks here in addition to the remixes and instrumentals. Pokemon games are known for their excellent original soundtracks, and this game definitely falls short in the original aspect when it comes to music. As for the sound effects and general audio, they are also pretty good. In particular, I've always loved the random exclamations from the enemy trainers like Lieutenant Surge's "Oh, poor baby," or Blaine's "When you're hot, you're hot." I don't know why, but I've always found these extremely amusing. I'm pretty sure at least some of these lines and many of the other sound effects from the game also come from the anime, which is not great if true, but I'm not really going to dig around for hours just to confirm this theory. At the end of the day, a lot of the things that would have required a decent amount of creativity from the developers, like the music, the character designs, the gameplay loop, and the game modes, all came from some other reference source, be it the Pokemon anime or Panel de Pon. This isn't inherently a bad thing, as I do believe the game is still a lot of fun despite the overabundance of repurposed content, but I also would have really liked to have seen what the developers could have done with just a bit more creative autonomy. Pokemon Puzzle League is a game that many people of my generation have very fond memories of. Be it nail-biting battles against the Elite Four, laughing at the absurd voice lines of many of the characters, or just chilling out on the couch battling your friends, there's definitely a lot of nostalgia here. But does the game hold up today? Well, I can tell you there are still some positives here, like the addition of the action puzzles, the many higher difficulty modes to keep even an adult engaged in the game, and the pure amount of content available. Now, in my opinion, these positives are mostly overshadowed by the negatives here, like the criminally underutilized Pokemon theme, the overabundance of repurposed content, and the extremely simple implementation of 3D puzzles. Like I've been saying this whole review, this does not mean Pokemon Puzzle League is a bad game. It simply means that, in my opinion, it doesn't really hold up today because it doesn't have enough of its own identity. The basic Panel de Pon gameplay that is found throughout the series will always be fun no matter what game it's implemented into, in my opinion, but without anything to really define Pokemon Puzzle League as unique in that regard, it's just Panel de Pon with a Pokemon skin. And as much as it pains me to say it, in all honesty, I'm not sure a game like that needed to be made. But that just about wraps things up for this review. As always, thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of the video, it always means a lot to me. If you happen to enjoy what you saw here today, consider giving the video a like, it's always greatly appreciated and helps me out a ton. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, consider subscribing as well. Thanks again for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Back out. Oh yeah, thanks for 500 subscribers, by the way. I said I was going to do a Q&A, but I only got one question, so I guess I'll just answer it here. Smooth Snake 23 asks, do you like the Dragon Ball series? Yes, Smooth Snake 23, yes I do. Have a good one, guys.